All right, good afternoon to all of you. We're here at this workshop specifically going to address the chair training. Some of you have already served on TRAC's on-site evaluation team visits, and you know that TRAC's policy states that once you have 3 site visits under your belt, we can have you serve as chairs. And so this workshop will specifically deal with the team chair training. So due to the paucity of time, we'll go through a very quick overview as some of the major responsibilities of the chair. There are 4 major steps and responsibilities. The first is the preliminary step. The second is the preparation for the site visit, coordination of the team's activities during the visit, and then any follow-up activities after the visit. So the preliminary step would be also your chair letter that you will be sending to the TRAC's team members once the staff contacts you and lets you know the team roster. Then you'll start preparing for that visit. You'll start coordinating the team's activities during the visit and any follow-up activities after the visit. What are some of the qualifications or requirements for the team chair? The chair is an experienced leader in higher education. The chair has served on several evaluation team visits. Normally it's 3 site visits, and then the chair has attended a chair workshop, which you all are participating in right now. And for those of you who are seeing this online or taking this online. Preliminary analysis, what is the preliminary step that we talked about? Once the self-study material is received, the chair and the TRAC staff will determine if a visit by the chair is required prior to the team visit and will determine if the evaluation team visit should proceed. Now, most of the times, the chair does not need to make a visit to the institution because the staff has already gone out and visited the institution, and if the chair has any significant concerns, they will contact he or she will contact the staff rep and take feedback from them. So normally in this step, the TRAC staff has already conducted the visit. The chair does not necessarily need to make a prior visit before the team gets there. However, there have been cases where if the chair is significantly concerned about certain issues, they will then ask the staff to schedule a visit to the institution. Issues to be considered in this decision, if there's any issues concerning faculty or the financial stability of the institution, or if the programs, educational programs are in question, library resources are in question, student services, physical plant, administrative control or administration, any of this could be a red flag for the chair to decide if he or she needs to make a visit to the institution. If any one of the issues is not sufficiently clarified in the self-study, then a chair visit will be required. In preparation for the visit, make sure that the president or the accreditation liaison has completed all assignments in preparation for the visit. Upon reception of the names of the team members and date of the visit, establish communication with each team member to verify the date of the visit. This can be done simply by sending out an email to all of the team members that you will be receiving in the form of a roster from the TRAC's office. To verify the date of the visit, to verify the arrival and the departure times of the team members, to establish that all self-study materials have been duly received. Preparations continued. Review the materials that is submitted by the institution. Verify that each team member has received the materials. This is very important. Sometimes if you do not contact them, you will find that the team members themselves will write to you stating that we have not received these materials. At that point, then, it becomes your prerogative to contact the institution directly and let the accreditation liaison or the president of the institution know that such and such team member has not yet received, let's say, for example, the financial person has not received the external audit. So would you kindly facilitate that? So that is your responsibility then to make contact with the president of the institution or the accreditation liaison to make sure that each team member has received their materials. Sometimes concerning institutional assessment and institutional research and planning, institutions will just send their strategic plan and their assessment plan document, but will forget to send assessment data or assessment reports. And then the IE person on the team will write to the chair that I would like to see some assessment data. That's becomes the chair's responsibility then to communicate with the president or the accreditation liaison to make sure that this person receives all of that. Encourage each team member to read the self-study and start writing their draft report. This has greatly been beneficial for the team members because we don't spend then too much of time writing a report from scratch. So you will encourage in your team or your chair letter to the team members that you start thinking about a draft report based on the benchmarks of tracks. Sometimes the chair will send out a template of the team report for the team members to start plugging in the information just based on tracks benchmarks. Request questions from team members. I've seen this ever so often where the chair will write to the team members that have all of your questions ready that you'll need to interview with your specific persons for your specific areas, and some chairs ask for those questions in advance. It's a good practice to do that. So request questions from team members. Contact the chair of any other agency involved in the visit. What I mean by that is sometimes we have dual accredited institutions, even in the membership of tracks, where we have institutions that are accredited by other accrediting agencies. And so sometimes we had this last year where an institution had a dual visit. Tracks was the lead, and there was another national accrediting agency, and they sent their representatives as well. So you can contact the chair of that agency that was involved in the visit as well, if you know that there will be two accrediting agencies that are involved. Confirm with the institution and tracks staff the visit logistics. By that we mean in terms of accommodations for the team members, travel logistics, any kind of those coordination also then falls on your behest for you to contact the track staff to make sure that all the travel arrangements and accommodation arrangements have been made by the institution. Request any additional information that is needed from the institution. Plan in conjunction with the track staff the daily schedule and follow the general format that is suggested by tracks. You will see that tracks will send you a schedule of all the 3 or 4 days that you're there on campus, and you want to plan all of your schedule just based on the format suggested by the tracks office. Coordination of the team activities during the visit. Schedule the flight in order to arrive early ahead of the remainder of the team in order to confirm that the necessary arrangements have been made. Sometimes the chair and the staff will get there a day early just to see what kind of arrangements have been made, whether the team room has all of the necessary exhibits and documentation and things like that. So you want to make sure that you want to arrive a little early ahead of the team. Obtain a list of the hotel room assignments and communicate to the team members the location of the first meeting. Normally, it is done in the conference room of the hotel that the team is residing in. We always tell institutions to have a conference room ready at the hotel where they'll be meeting, and that's when the team orientation takes place. Normally, it takes place at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So most of the times, you have all of the team members flying in around noon, 1 o'clock, so that they have a couple of hours to just relax and freshen themselves up for the initial team orientation meeting, which takes place at 4 o'clock. Visit the institution if possible prior to team arrival to view the documents room for readiness, to confirm availability of the computer and printer in the workroom, and to interact with the individual who will type the report. Now, normally, in the past, we used to have a secretary who used to type the team report. Nowadays, the onus is on the staff rep, and the staff rep actually acts as the editor of the team report. And what the staff rep will do on a visit is If it's a Monday through Thursday visit, by Wednesday afternoon, 12 o'clock, the staff will start requesting the team members to start sending in their draft sections of their report. And the staff is the one who starts typing the actual report and plugging in the various sections into the team report. Coordination: the staff representative will arrive early and work with the team chair. They will hold an orientation meeting the afternoon of the team arrival in order to organize the team and make specific assignments. They will also conduct the team training session. They will provide the team a suggested schedule for the visit. The team training session, we do have a PowerPoint that the staff rep will send to the chairs in advance of the team visit, and that's the PowerPoint that the chair will go through with the team during the team orientation session. Make sure that the needs of the team are taken care of during the visit. Keep the team on a very strict schedule. Act as the team spokesperson in all matters pertaining to policy, procedures, and institutional relations. So basically, if there is a question from the visiting, where you're visiting the institution that you're visiting, and it is a question of policy or a procedural question which the team member has no authority to answer on, they will defer the question to the team chair, and then it becomes your responsibility to be the team spokesperson as the chair in all matters pertaining to policy and procedures and institutional relations. Receive individual reports, the draft sections of each of the team members, and you will also edit the final report and file the report with the track staff person. We are one of the very few accrediting agencies that actually leave a draft copy of a team report before the team actually leaves the campus. And so then that becomes your responsibility then to hand that report to the president. The first copy goes to the president before we actually get into the exit interview. You will conduct the final team meeting to complete the team evaluation forms. Prior to the exit interview, the chair and the staff person should meet with the president to inform him of the major points of the team findings. The team recommendation should not be given to the president or anyone. Now, let me elaborate on this point a little bit. The exit interview is actually a very formal event that takes place right after the team has finished writing the report. The team also will meet and make a recommendation to the commission. They will vote, and the vote can go four ways. The first is that the team recommends to the commission that the institution be granted the status sought without any conditions. The second way that the vote can go, that the team requests or recommends the commission to grant the status sought to an institution but with conditions, and then they will note what those conditions are. The third recommendation that the team can make to the commission is to defer the institution because they feel that this institution needs some time to work through their issues. And the fourth is to deny accreditation. And so it becomes your responsibility as chair to lead this discussion. That's why we have 5 people on the visit. Sixth, of course, the staff rep cannot take part in the deliberations as such because this is a peer review process. You want to make sure that there is a simple majority, okay, and that's why they vote on that decision. Sometimes it is unanimous, sometimes it is not. And so it becomes your responsibility to lead them through that process. Now, that team recommendation and in the chair recommendation letter that goes out to the president and eventually to the commission, that recommendation is extremely confidential. It cannot at any cost be shared with the president of the institution or anybody else. So you want to make sure, because that can change. If the team has made a recommendation to the commission, that can even change sometimes at the commission level. And that's why we do not tell them what the recommendation of the visiting team is to the commission. You will then lead the exit interview. So what happens is just before the exit interview takes place, the track staff rep and the chair of the visiting team will meet the president alone and they will basically go through the report, just kind of give an overview. It's just a 5-minute to 10-minute meeting with the president where they will discuss the findings or the major points of the team findings. So if there were any identifiable weaknesses, they will mention that to the president. And then that meeting will be done. Soon after that meeting, the exit interview takes place. That's a very formal process where the chair, as the chair, will make an opening remark, have a prayer, and they then turn it over to the track staff rep, who will then explain the process to the institution as to what happens from that point on. And once that takes place, you will have a final prayer, and that ends the committee work of the team, and your responsibility ceases. The visiting institution cannot question, according to TRAC's protocol, anything's on the team report. From that point on, they will have to contact the TRAC's office directly. So you will lead that exit interview. So follow-up activities after the visit. You will provide a letter to the president of TRAC's specifying the visiting team's recommendation for action by the Accreditation Commission. That letter, it will be in your team evaluation instruments. And we will talk about that in just a bit. I do have a copy of the evaluation instruments for chairs, and it looks something like this. So that will be the evaluation instruments, and if you'll notice, evaluation instrument number 2 is the chair letter, and that's your recommendation to the commission. And like I stated, that the vote can go 4 ways, and you have all of those 4 different votes. Once the decision takes place by the visiting team, you will check off what the vote was, and that's that letter which will be sent to the TRAC's president, eventually to the Accreditation Commission. You will submit a draft report to the institutional president, as I just stated, and you will send a letter of appreciation to each team member after the visit is done. Provide the TRAC's commission readers information as requested. Of course, this is something that the TRAC staff will make provision to the commission readers. What happens after the visit is that the institution will get some time to respond to what is known as an errors of fact form, which will be given to the president just before the exit interview. The president has exactly 2 weeks to come back to the TRAC's office with what is known as an errors of fact. And errors of fact are any factual errors that the visiting institution found in the team report. For example, if the enrollment of a school is 650 students and the team made a mention that there are 620 students, that's a factual error. And so any kind of those factual errors will be addressed in an errors of fact form. Once we receive that at the TRAC's office will then finalize the team report, and then an institutional response matrix along with the finalized team report will be sent to the institution. The institution is supposed to respond no later than 60 days before the commission meeting on that response matrix. They will send in additional documentation in support of their addressing the different recommendations, suggestions, and then TRAC staff. There is a column on that matrix where TRAC staff will state whether their institution is in compliance or it's in process with those recommendations and suggestions. This is the same information that the TRAC's commission readers, there will be 2 readers from the TRAC's commission who are appointed to read what the staff are reading at the office. And so they will make a recommendation to the commission as well. So the first orientation meeting, as stated earlier, is normally the team will arrive in sometime by 12 or 1 that first day, and it normally is around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. During the meeting, the chair conducts a short devotional to focus the team's responsibility. It will review the proposed team schedule, review the team members' individual responsibilities, and they will conduct a team training session. Emphasize that the institution is responsible for complying with the narrative portion of the accreditation manual, as well as with all of the standards, criteria, and the IERs. The IERs are the institutional eligibility requirements. When an institution is in an applicant status moving towards candidacy, you want to make sure that all of the 10 institutional eligibility requirements are in compliance, because that is defined by the Commission as basic compliance. And so you will emphasize to your team members that the institution is responsible for complying with all of the narrative portion of the manual as well as the standards, criteria, and the IERs. In the meeting, team members should identify areas of perceived non-compliance. Use the benchmarks as a basis for writing the report. Recommendations, suggestions, and commendations should start developing. If you see that in not just the IER, but as a standard, if a standard is in violation, then it definitely calls for your team to make a recommendation. Now, sometimes team members will say, okay, we'd like to give this as a recommendation, but because there is no track standard, how do we handle this? And so then it becomes your responsibility to let the team members know that they are allowed to write that as a suggestion, which are professional opinions of team members that would benefit the institution that you are visiting. So always remember that recommendations are criterion referenced because they tie in directly to a track standard. Suggestions are professional opinions, and then commendations are outstanding fulfillment of track standards. If you go to an institution and you see that this institution is doing something exemplary above and beyond the call of duty, then it becomes your responsibility as a chairperson to make known to the team that maybe this is something worthy of a commendation, and let the team decide whether or not that could be a commendation, your recommendation to be a commendation. And so commendations are very rare because they're outstanding fulfillments. It's not too many times that you will see commendations. If there is 1 or 2 commendations on the team report, that is really, really great. And I have been to institutions where I have seen upwards of even 3 and 4 commendations sometimes, but they don't come that easy. Recommendations are what an institution must do to be accredited. Like I stated, they are directly tied to track standards. Suggestions are helpful hints, but they're not mandatory for accreditation. They're professional opinions of team members. Commendations, on the other hand, are outstanding fulfillment of track standards. Efforts should be made to combine areas that readily lend themselves to be listed in one recommendation, suggestion, or commendation to eliminate duplication. This is very important because you will see sometimes that our standards intersect with one another. So you have in the educational programs standards that directly tie into programmatic learning outcomes, the student learning outcomes, and you will see some of those standards in the institutional assessment areas. So if, for example, an institution is out of compliance with not having written measurable learning outcomes or do not have the assessment instruments to measure those outcomes, and both the educational program person who is overseeing the educational programs and faculty and the person who is overseeing the institutional assessment, they want to write a recommendation, instead of writing 2 recommendations in 2 of those different areas, it is your responsibility as chair to have them combine those recommendations and give it in one section, either under the educational programs or under institutional assessment. And that's your prerogative as chair to decide with the team members where that recommendation will fit. And then what you do is then you criterion reference the educational program standards that are not in compliance, as well the institutional assessment standards that are not in compliance, and you just criterion reference both under one recommendation. So that saves the institution also certain recommendations instead of giving them numerous recommendations under the same area. Now let's look at the report, the team report. You have the format, you have the title page, you have the team history, its location, its relationship to tracks, the visit itself, appreciation, and then the team report that addresses the foundational and operational standards, each section in its order. Each accreditation area is addressed with narrative that describes the findings compared to the standards and criteria and IERs. The narrative should contain information that leads to the recommendations, suggestions, and commendations. I always encourage our team members to look at the benchmarks for excellence. And in that benchmarks will be the flesh that really leads to the narrative of the team report. Every single recommendation that your team writes has to be well supported in the narrative of the team report. And you will see under the benchmarks that it's on a Likert scale. You have a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, and 1. And so whatever fits, so if it's a 2, that means they're falling below the standard. It calls for a recommendation. There are benchmarks, and you'll basically take those benchmarks as you write the narrative section of that team report, and then that way the institution knows why they got that particular recommendation. It should be addressed in the narrative very clearly. The narrative should contain information that leads to the recommendations, the suggestions, and the commendations. Please ensure that each major standard and criteria is adequately addressed in the team report. Recommendations are criterion referenced, as I just mentioned. So after each recommendation, you will have a parenthesis, and in that parenthesis, you will quote the standard that is in violation. Keep the team extremely focused. It's very easy sometimes to go off the beaten path and follow rabbit trails, and you don't want to do that. So keep the team extremely focused. The visit should have a positive tone, because at the end of the day, you are here to help them grow as an institution of quality learning. Suggestions: keep the team and institution focused. Keep the schedule moving. Very, very important. That is, we say that you sometimes have to just crack the whip on your team members. Okay, keep the schedule moving. Keep the team writing the report. Don't allow the institution to divert the attention from its purpose, excellent accommodations, or lengthy meals. And sometimes that happens when we've seen that on certain visits where we have the second day being the board interview. Sometimes the board interviews can go a little long than what it should be because the teams would like to facilitate that in a nice restaurant, and the next thing you know, you've already expended 2 hours without even knowing it. Okay, so don't allow the institution to divert the attention from its purpose. Keep the team objective. Every recommendation must be linked to a standard. If there is no standard, the team member says, Dr. So-and-so, I want to write up a recommendation because I feel that this is what it should be. Well, if you do not have a track standard, you just have to very politely tell them, I'm sorry, that's a very good thought, but we cannot write it because it is not a TRACS standard. Avoid repetitive recommendations, as I just stated. Combine recommendations when feasible and place the recommendation at the best strategic location. As I mentioned, if you see a programmatic outcomes under educational programs and institutional assessment, you make a decision which would be the best strategic location to place that recommendation, that combined recommendation. Every recommendation then must have the specific standard and criteria stated at the end of the statement. Read the report for grammar, sense, and organization. And this will also be helped and facilitated by the track staff as they are plugging information as they receive that from your team members.
Every recommendation or suggestion should be based on the narrative in the team report. All institutions must have a financial audit for the latest fiscal year. This includes management letters. Do not let this slide. The assessment component, institutional effectiveness, should be thoroughly reviewed. The assessment component must include a plan. The institution should demonstrate that they're actively collecting data and using the same data for changes.
Institutions must have assessment data that demonstrates that the institution is fulfilling its mission. And so your institutional assessment person will be the one responsible to look at all of those assessment data. And institutions must address student learning outcomes. How does the institution determine that students are learning? So I always tell institutions, write measurable learning outcomes. And so when the team comes in there, your responsibility to see is, yes, they have written or not the good measurable programmatic learning outcomes, and then to make a determination, if students are really learning. What are some of those assessment measures? Federal financial aid programs must be scrutinized, note institutional default rates in the team report. Check teaching sites and or branch campuses, tracks if it's a candidate institution and they're bringing that on, it is your responsibility as chair to make sure that sometime during that visit that the teaching site or the branch campus is visited. Okay, so check on any teaching sites or branch campuses. Be very, very thorough. The team has the ethical obligation to apply the standards and criteria at either the basic or the substantive levels. Don't be arrogant or don't be a softie. You just need to strike the right balance as a chair. Institutions are best served when they are dealt with firmly, lovingly, and honestly in the light of the standards and criteria. So let's just summarize the responsibilities. Communicate to the evaluation team and the institution. Read and review all of the material that is sent to you. Make sure that the institution is prepared. Plan a team orientation session. Conduct the exit interview. Plan the opening dinner. Facilitate the schedules and the interviews. And we always state that at the team orientation meeting itself, the team members will be able to give you a list of all the people that they will need to interview the next 2 days. So let's say, for example, it's a Monday through Thursday visit. Monday evening, 4 o'clock will be your team orientation meeting. After you conduct the orientation meeting and turn it over to the staff rep will go through certain Department of Education regulations that needs to be closely scrutinized at the institution. And once that is done, you would request all of your team members then to give you a list of all the anticipated interviews with the anticipated the people that they would like to interview, because that's what you will take to the opening night dinner with the president of the institution and their administration leadership team, and you will give that to the president, and it's the president's responsibility then to make sure that all the people that you have listed on that sheet are available to your team to be interviewed the next 2 days. I would like to show you a chair letter. We talked about a chair letter, and this is one of the sample chair letters that was sent out by the Office of the President from one of our member institutions. And this is a chair letter that was sent to the team members. And this visit took place a couple of years ago, and if you see the things that I want to highlight there, you have a list of anticipated interviews and questions, a list of documents that is needed, and he stated complete the tracks workbook, write an initial draft of your report, and he advised them to send it to him, email copies of your preliminary work by the Thursday prior to the actual visit. So about a week before, he was requesting that the team members email copies of their preliminary work. Okay, so that's a sample chair letter that was sent out to all the team members. Now, this is also another letter that can be, and all these letters are available by the track staff, and they will send that to you once they contact you to be the chair of the visit. They will send you this letter, and you can modify that and put it on your letterhead and send it to all the team members. And one of the things that you want to remember is all the publications on the team report. You would need to tell your team that all of those publications need to be italicized. So if the institution has a catalog, strategic plan, assessment plan, student handbook, faculty handbook, all of those need to be italicized. You want to make sure when you write recommendations and suggestions that you say the visiting team recommends or the visiting team suggests, and the V and the T to be in caps. After the suggestion or recommendation has been listed, especially the recommendation, you want to put the standard numbers in parentheses. And so you see that's a sample narrative, a sample suggestion, sample narrative, a sample recommendation. So this is a sample team letter, a chair letter to the team that we can send to you from the TRACS office, which is one of your initial responsibilities, at least 4 weeks prior to the actual team visit, that the chair takes the time to send this letter out to all of the team members. Okay, I think we are almost done here, and if there are any questions and answers, I'll be more than happy to assist in the process.
What's the time frame that we would typically receive the self-study from the institution?
The current time frame is no later than 6 weeks before the actual site visit happens. So what will happen is they will send it to the TRACS office 6 weeks prior to the visit. TRACS staff will very quickly review the self-study to look for the format as well as for the content of the of the self-study. Once the TRACS staff has reviewed and approved it, the institution will immediately send all of the documents to the team members, because they would have already received a roster. We always look to check in the self-study report first that every single standard of TRACS has been addressed. Even if it's not applicable to them, they have to write not applicable. And then we look at the format, and in the format of a self-study report, we look at every single standard should have a compliance narrative and then a documentation section, which entails or lists all of the exhibits or the appendices, as you call it. So that's the thing that we look for before we give approval from the TRACS office to be sent to all the team members. Typically, for the person on the team that is evaluating the publications and policies and procedures, we request from the institution that the institution send all of the publications to that person, which will include all of the handbooks, the catalog, faculty handbook, board manual, student handbook, and things like that. For the team member that will be evaluating the institutional assessment areas, they will normally send all of the strategic plan, the assessment plan, any assessment reports, and assessment data. To the financial person on the team, the institution is responsible for sending the latest, most recent external audit with any kind of management letters, financial reports, and things like that. So those are kind of the key things. For the librarian on the team, also will look at the library manual if the institution has one. Any other questions or comments? Okay, once you have completed this workshop, you will have the opportunity to fill up the chair form, and you will be added onto the pool of chairs, and TRACS will very shortly contact you to be a chair. Okay, thank you.